you need to understand the technology behind modern applications. How many folks in here have ever taken a programming course? Good, excellent. You might not have liked it, but at least you took it. If you haven't, I strongly encourage you to try to find an extra elective just to get some basic exposure, not because I'm trying to turn you into professional software developers, even though if you want a job and you want to make a lot of money, professional software developers are doing pretty well these days. But you need to be able to understand and translate from business to tech and from tech to business. Those people who can do that are going to prosper in this age of disruption. How do you build a modern application? Anybody use Evernote? Yeah, it's a pretty good app, huh? Yeah. If you look at the apps that tend to get very high ratings in the App Store, that tend to be used by millions and millions of people that are driving this transition, you see some recurring technology themes that underpin them. In general, they have omni-channel clients. You can get access to the information on just about any device you want: tablet, cell phone, laptop, desktop, browser, TV, connected car. They are deployed on elastic infrastructure. The reason I think you really have to understand what's going on with things like Amazon and Azure and the Google Cloud platform and Salesforce's Heroku platform is because that elastic infrastructure lets you map costs to variable cost and operational expense instead of capital expense. That creates a huge opportunity to shift costs out to when they are actually incurred, and to also dial that capability up and down when you need it and optimize your operational expense. They aggregate discrete services. Now, in my generation of developers, we had what we called not invented here syndrome, which was, if I need to have a service that does X, even if the other project team in my same company has built a service that does X, I'm probably going to go build my own because I can't trust those folks to do exactly what I need. I don't get access to it. Now, my son's generation, he's a junior at MIT, they have the exact opposite mentality, which is, if I need a service to do something, it must be out there. Somebody else must have written it. All I have to do is find it. So I'll go out on GitHub. I'll go look at third-party companies that are providing the services. I need to do real-time notification. I'll go use Twilio. I need to store customer data. I'll go use Dreamforce or Salesforce's APIs. But the assumption is that there are services out there that I can build on. Because of that, they tend to use managed APIs, which they get accounts for. They integrate open source software. The amount of revenue and the amount of value that has been shifted out of the supply chain from commercial software to open source software over the last 10 to 15 years is incredible. In our last developer survey, we saw that about 83% of developers tell us that they have used open source at some level of their application that they have deployed into production in the last 12 months. The largest companies, the smallest companies, they're using open source at scale, which again allows them to defer capital costs into operational expense, either their own labor or a support contract if they decide they need it. It also gives them the capability to defer the right to upgrade, which is important from a software perspective, from the value of service provided. If I go buy an Oracle database, guess what? I got to pay 28% a year every year if I want to be able to upgrade that database, regardless of how good or bad the service for support that is provided to me is. Open source breaks that value constraint forever. From a process perspective, we see these teams employing continuous delivery, a process of delivering fast on a regular basis every few weeks, multiple times a month. Amazon deploys changes every half second. 2 times a second you see something new go up on Amazon's website. Now that doesn't mean that they deploy all the services every half second. It means if you look across the thousands and thousands of capabilities that are across all of Amazon's products or services, 2 of those are changing every second. They've gotten to that point because they have the processes in place that enable them to change lots and lots of little things instead of one big thing. One of the biggest changes for large corporations is getting them to give up the illusion of control. no matter how good you are, no matter how much you constrain things, no matter how many boundaries you try to put around the problem, unless you're working in an area where all the research has been done, all the constraints are known, all the customer behaviors are understood, you're going to miss things. And the more disruptive our business climate is, the more trying to put constraints and control things around is going to fail. So your business analysts don't need to spend an exhaustive amount of time being an analysis paralysis trying to accurately define the product that is going to win the market for all time. They need to do something. They need to measure the results, and they need to take that information and get it right back into the product cycle and keep moving forward. The beauty of software is you're not burning atoms. You can do this. It's digital. You can update it. You can make it better. You can move it forward. So you have to get into that fast feedback loop as quickly as possible. And that's why the startups run rings around the established providers in industry after industry as we see these disruptive changes going on. Why don't we all already have our own robots? Why don't we all have our own jetpacks? And why didn't the Newton succeed the first time it came out? Well, because people do tend to be somewhat change resistant, and adoption of new technologies can be scary and hard. In fact, a middle manager in the 1500s probably summed it up best, that whenever you try to introduce a new change or a new business model, be prepared for it to be the most difficult thing, the most perilous thing, and the most uncertain thing. It's hard to build a new order. It's Machiavelli, if you're not familiar with the picture. We see this in our own data. So in the year, in 1999, when we first started doing a lot of work around the web, we asked consumers in the US a question about whether or not they would go online. And in 1999, we had roughly 30% of the respondents tell us they were never going to go online. 30% of people in the US saying, why would I ever want to do that? Now, when we surveyed them the next year, what we found that was 30% of that 30%. So fully 10% of those additional people had gone online in the last 12 months. So they told us they were never going to do it, and then they ended up doing it. And we see this sort of behavior all the time where people say one thing, and then they end up doing another. Even today with new technologies, we are dealing with consumers that look at the costs, the trade-off, and most importantly, the losses of potentially adopting a new technology, a new app, a new piece of software. We have a term for that. It's called loss aversion. So what we see is the successful folks that are employing software for profit and gain are increasingly the ones that are able to reduce the consumer's perception of the loss that they might incur by taking the risk. And that's where something like customer experience becomes oh so important as part of the solution that you put into place, because customer experience, more than anything, helps calm the amygdala. So as we've got old businesses transforming into new businesses with more ideas at lower costs, you're going to have a lot more substitutes out there. You're going to have a lot more competitors. The competition is going to be in a bloody red ocean. The barriers to entry are going to be hard to establish and maintain. We think that one of the barriers that you will be able to put in place and maintain if you do it right is superior customer experience. We're in a new age, the age of the customer. Software is rebalancing the power to the customer. It's eroding barriers to entry. It's increasing the ability to substitute technology into existing markets. The way that we build apps and services from a technology perspective is changing. From a process perspective, it's changing. It's getting cheaper. It's getting faster. That creates opportunities. There's a huge skill gap out there. If you can master the connection between business and technology and understand these changes, you are going to do fine. You're not going to have a problem getting a job. You're going to make a lot of money. When by reducing the adoption risk that customers have by investing in great customer experience. That's why I have an Apple machine. I might not like the company, might not like the technology, but it's a great customer experience and the stuff just works. And then finally, don't just solve the technology problem. make sure that you also challenge the culture of the organizations that you work at, because that's the real issue. You do all that, you'll be great. Thanks a lot.